if you go to certain places or go into certain rooms, in the past, I feel like I could let the energy, and I don't know if I want to even use that terminology, but the atmosphere of the room shift me versus me walking into rooms and not necessarily going in there to be like, oh, I need to shift the atmosphere, but not allowing other people to like, because sometimes what I realize is like, when you have taken that time in solitude, in your little interlude of life, you know what I'm saying? Your interlude of life, okay? That pause, when you come out of that, people can see it. You know what I'm saying? People can pick up on, okay, it's something different about her in her spirit, the way she carries herself, not from a perspective of, because some people will try to make it seem like, oh, well, she thinks she's this. And if you feel that way about me, and because I can be the nicest person to people, right? And people will still try to say stuff like that. So that's why you gotta, you know, take the meat, throw away the bones when what people are saying, okay? Because sometimes that is a projection, number one. And two, it's like, you know, sometimes people will admire certain things and not know how to deal with those emotions. And again, not putting yourself up here thinking that you're just all that. No, it's not that, but it's just that healing process. Like, people a lot of times can, I feel, we mask it and we act like we've, you know, going to one therapy session and it's like, okay, I'm healed. And it's like, no, a lot of times God has to take us the long path, and he has to take us a longer path, even when it comes, not always, it depends. I feel like this is why everything can be a case-by-case basis, because sometimes, you know, depending on the severity of a situation, like I've seen people that was in, you know, domestic situations, and they came out and, you know, got into a relationship, and people are like, oh, well, you know, they didn't even take time to heal, but not knowing that they had been healing the whole time they had been trying to escape that situation, you know. But then on the flip side, you know, like God had really had me in a season of like solitude. And, you know, even when I think about like dating, things like that, it had been going on, what, 7 years since I had been in a relationship, you know. But that was intentional with the Lord, because he was like, I need you to know who Millie is outside of, you know, another person, outside of all of the labels and the mask and all of the things that we try to put on ourselves to make us feel better. Or then also, like, what am I trying to say, Lord? And knowing myself outside of all of the labels, the mask, all of the things that we can hide behind, in a sense. Granted, you know, not to say those things aren't important. I'm not saying that. So, because sometimes people be knowing what you're saying, and they just be trying to take stuff and make it something else that it ain't, that's not even what it is, you know. But I feel like sometimes we will use certain things that are comfortable to us as a crutch, and it's like sometimes God has to strip us, because it's like, and sometimes God has to strip all of those things either away from us or distance ourselves from it, or even just allowing him to let us learn like what it is, not without necessarily, but sometimes it just depends on what it is to you. You know, he has to remove certain things, and that's why I said it's a case-by-case basis, you know. Or, you know, it, because sometimes you're like, okay, well, is this permanent? It may be permanent, it may be for a season. I know for me, and that's why I can only speak from my personal experience, right, that, you know, it's like God was like, how do you define yourself outside of these things? And then looking at truly how God defines me, right? Because I don't know, I feel like we can get caught up in that stuff, and we're really missing the fullness of the time that God wants to spend with us to show us certain things about ourselves, because we're so busy in being all of these things. And some things, and some of the reason for our tiredness, some of the reason for our exhaustion comes from doing and being in a lot of rooms or doing things, you know, that God never intended for us to do.